My next guests say the liberal rioters not following their candidate's advice. He is Dallas Fallen Officer Foundation President, Police Sergeant Demetrick Pennie, and his attorney, Larry Klayman. They're both suing the government for starting a race war. Good to see you both again, Sergeant Pennie and Larry. Larry, you're wearing sunglasses. You had eye surgery. Are you okay there?
I had eye surgery. I have to say, Liz, I don't blame Black Lives Matter for this one, but we'll talk about what the problem is here. It's obviously a serious problem with regard to this violence.
So, Sergeant, rioters not taking the high road. Is that what's going on, Sergeant?
Listen. These are the same rioters that were involved in Black Lives Matter. These are all paid agitators. This is nothing new. This is the same thing that they've done. The 1969 riots in Berkeley, this same exact thing. These are all paid agitators. It's the same group of individuals. You had a lot of rioters out there that are protesting and don't even know what they're protesting about. And that just kind of feeds to the further narrative that when Hillary Clinton lost the election, that they were going to do everything they can to destroy Donald Trump. And so you can see that. I mean, this is all funded by George Soros.
It's a good point. Larry, this is a fair election. And to the sergeant's point, even the protesters are saying, and the police in Portland are saying, wait a second, anarchists are flooding in, and they're taking over these protests and turning it into riots, where they're destroying stores, where they're destroying cars. And Larry, I'd like your thoughts on this. Remember when President Obama repeatedly blamed Bush when he became president in 2009? Take a listen to what President Obama said back then.
I want to say a few words about the deepening economic crisis that we've inherited and the need for urgent action. We have inherited an economic crisis as deep and as dire as any since the Great Depression. Now, my administration inherited a deficit of over $1 trillion. But because we also inherited the most profound economic emergency since the Great Depression.
And now, Larry and Sergeant, I'd like your thoughts on this. You know, the critics have been calling out President Obama because also President-elect Trump inherited this mess of protests going on and 6 major race riots occurring just during President Obama's term, Larry. And you're even suing over that.
That's right. We are, and we, of course, are concerned about what's going on. I predicted this, Liz, weeks ago, that they would go violent. President Obama met with Donald Trump the other day, and he put on a good face, but it was a two-faced. Is that really, as Kellyanne Conway said, he could quiet this down. He could tell people to be quiet. But in fact, this morning, he was complimenting the protesters, saying they had a right to protest. So don't be fooled by this facade in the White House right now. President Obama, I believe, and his co-conspirators at Black Lives Matter, Al Sharpton, Louis Farrakhan, Nation of Islam, they want to see this erupt because they're not satisfied with the election results. And in fact, they've stoked a potential civil war here. It's going to get worse rather than get better. And we need to enforce the law. And President-elect Trump should make it clear that he will make people obey the law, and there will be consequence for this kind of conduct.
Again, to bring the viewer up to date, rioting expected tonight and through the weekend in major cities across the country. Sergeant, they're using students and millennials who are very emotional. We get it. We understand that they're emotional and they're passionate. But shouldn't they be channeling this destructive kind of feeling toward constructive things like getting involved in politics or even lobbying for change? I mean, how responsible is President Obama for these riots?
I think he's very, very responsible for it. This is all his agenda. He set this whole thing in motion by placing the blame of everything on law enforcement officers' back. And now in law enforcement, we got to sit here and measure this, okay? Are we going to allow their First Amendment rights to trump our Fourth Amendment rights to fair and equal treatment? Just because we put on a badge and carry a gun don't mean that we don't get the same treatment that they do as citizens. Things like this wouldn't happen in countries like Israel, but because they quell those type of riots when they break out because their tactics are different than ours. We are acknowledging the fact that they have a right to protest, they have a right to peacefully protest, but these are riots. These are endangering officers' lives. There are too many people for law enforcement officers to go out there and actively engage. It's difficult. These officers, you're going to have a lot more officers placing their lives in harm's way trying to stop these protests.
Yeah.
We got to have the government, we got to have the president stand up and stop
Liz,
it.
too.
Go ahead, Larry.
The American people just waged a peaceful revolution at the ballot box.
And a fair
But
election.
Apparently that's a fair election. That's not what the left has in mind. They're not going to take this sitting down. They are now going to ratchet it up to the point where people are going to be in the streets more and more. You're going to see more of this violence, and unless there's a crackdown now on law and order, it's going to get worse. And President Trump needs to make that clear.
Larry, who should make a statement calming the waters here? Larry, first to you. Quick.
President Obama should do it himself, but he won't do it because he wants it to happen. But Donald Trump should make it clear that once he assumes office on January 20th, if this continues, there's going to be hell to pay. The law is going to be enforced.
Sergeant, who should make a comment to calm the waters here, Sergeant?
President Barack Obama should first do it. He should set the tone going into this, entering this election cycle.
Okay.
And then when President, and you better believe that President-elect Donald Trump is going to stop it. But at the same time, the states got to stand up, and the states got to say, hey, we're not going to allow you to destroy our cities.
Right.
And we're going to send in National Guard. Anytime you guys mobilize, we're going to mobilize.
It's peaceful protests are allowed in this country, but when they turn violent, it's not right. Thank you, Sergeant Pennie and Larry Klayman.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time.